A supercar, also called an exotic car, is loosely defined or described as a street-legal, super performance car, both in terms of power, speed, and handling, used for low-bodied sports cars with powerful, rear-mounted mid-engine car. That's exactly what the Miura is, word for word. Street-legal, powerful, at least for the time, and mid-engine. How has a car from the 60s made the definition of what a supercar is today? For all the changes in technology, how has something so advanced as a high-performing car stayed so similar? I'm sure you all know the story of Lamborghini, but let me just quickly recap. Ferruccio Lamborghini, an Italian industrialist and entrepreneur, coming back from World War II, realized there were a ton of war machinery just laying around and realized he could make something about this. In 1963, Ferruccio Lamborghini initially started his career as a tractor manufacturer. He established a successful business called Lamborghini Trattore. He used engines from war machines that were very cheap to find. This means his tractors would be at a lower price compared to the competitors. This made him very successful. There were other reasons that contributed to his success, like how Italy gave Italian farmers money back for buying Italian-made farm equipment, such as tractors. And many tractor builders before the war got destroyed, leaving fewer competition. Because he was so successful, in Italy he enjoyed driving Ferraris, but there was a massive problem with this. He couldn't drive his Ferraris very often, because they kept breaking down. He found a way to fix his Ferraris using parts from his tractors. He would go to Enzo himself and tell him that his cars were simply shit. The clutch was horrible. He could help Enzo and Ferrari create better cars using parts from his tractor. Enzo Ferrari, in Italian, said something along the lines of, "You're a tractor driver. You're a farmer. You shouldn't complain about driving my cars. They are the best in the world." This infuriated Ferruccio so much that he scrapped making any tractors at all and started making sports cars that would absolutely destroy Ferrari. The first Lamborghini ever made was a 350 GTV, designed by Franco Scaglione. The prototype was produced in only 4 months and was exhibited in the 1963 Turin Motor Show. There, the production vehicles of the 350 GT started. The name 350 comes from Lamborghini's spite of Ferrari. Ferrari had a car at that time called the 250 GT, and Lamborghini wanted to one-up them. Ferruccio didn't want to beat Ferrari on a track. He was not focused on making race cars at all. He hated the idea of racing, because the reason that all the Ferrari road cars were so bad was because they were basically race cars that were sold for driving to anyone. And he focused on cars that were Grand Tours. They might not be the best on the track, but when driving, the driver gets an emotion that's pure happiness and joy. Thinking about a Porsche or a Hachiroku. He also wanted Lamborghinis to be reliable and not break down doing nothing. He even felt that all Lamborghinis should be front engine because it is the most sensible. This is a complete contrast of all the top engineers and designers who worked for him. They all wanted to create a car that could win big on a track. So the team convinced Ferruccio they could work on designing a sports car, saying it would be good publicity. He agreed that the car would be good publicity, and they started working on the car. But Ferruccio Lamborghini had a few rules for them: that the car could never race, from the factory at least, and that it had to be good at driving, be controllable, and reliable. The team quickly got to work. The designers had some interesting first designs. One even had a centered mounting driver's seat, very similar to the McLaren F1 they would do it almost 30 years later. The designers wanted to put the engine in the back because they wanted to create a race-inspired design. but they realized quickly that the engine would not be able to be used because there was a 3.9-liter V12 engine. This is the legendary engine that Lamborghini used all the way until Aventador. This engine was one of the most legendary Lamborghini engines ever made, from the Countach, Murcielago, and Aventador. The engine was very big because it was normally mounted in the front of cars that had a huge hood, and the engine would be put over the axles. Because the Miura was going to be mid-engine, they had to find a workaround, or the wheelbase would be way too long. And the workaround they found was turning the engine on its side to create a transverse mounted V12. This on its own was a prototype P40. P40 was only the chassis with an engine and a steering system. Even though the car wasn't complete, Lamborghini thought it would be ready for the Turin Saloon in 1965. The P400 was extremely popular at the Auto Saloon, and there was some publicity around it, just the chassis. They decided to create a full car afterwards, so they went to the Bitrone motor design shop to create a full body for the chassis to show at the Geneva Motor Show in 1966. The team at Bitrone finished only days before the motor show, but it didn't matter because the design looked beautiful. But they forgot one major thing. None of the engineers had time to check if the engine fit inside the compartment. Committed to showing the car, they decided to fill the engine bay with ballast to keep the hood locked at the motor show so no one could see the engine, or the lack of engine. Either way, the Miura, just like at the Turin Motor Show with the P40, became quickly the most popular car. Who could blame the reporters, journalists, and car fans who just wanted to look at the P40? It was absolutely stunning. The car had the elegance of a work of art, finally out of the dark, but also the aggression of a bull ready to fight. The front was shark-like. It would get smoother out at the back, creating a timeless design. The headlights would move up and down, creating better aero down. Create a car that anyone who could afford one needed one. Ferruccio realized he couldn't just call the car the P400. He needed to find a name that would capture the car's energy, the spirit, but also the spirit of Lamborghini. He chose to name it the Miura, after his friend Don Eduardo Miura, who bred bulls and had a breed of bulls named after him. And after they figured out how to fit the engine in, the car finally had the sound and ability that it deserved, the new Lamborghini badge, a bull over a gold background. The sound of the 12 cylinders behind you firing is one of the best car sounds ever made at that time. And when the full car was put together, finally people were able to buy them. 275 models were made between 1966 and 69, each one costing about $20,000, roughly $180,000 today. Even though it was much more expensive than any Ferrari at that time, it was a bargain to have the fastest car in the world, with a top speed of 170 miles per hour, a record for 15 years, along with a 0 to 60 in a blistering 6.7 seconds. That might not be fast for today's standards, but back then, it was the ultimate driving cars. A bull let free. Problems would soon come about for the Miura. Issues that would be the issues of the car being made half out of race car parts, and made in a hurry to reach the man of the car. The same problems that Ferrari made Ferruccio so fed up about. They would still soon plague the Lamborghini Miura. The tires were too narrow, and the Miura would nearly be uncontrollable in the corners. Lamborghini also used race carburetors made by Weber. The issue of this would be at idle, the space above the throttle would fill up with gas. Then the fuel would splash down on the manifold and ignite when the car would start driving again. Because of this, the Miura was a serious fire hazard. And almost comically, when the fuel tank would get empty, because it was in the front of the car, The weight of the fuel would start to get lighter, and the front of the end would lift up. Because of these issues, the Miura was revised to the P400S. It was again debuted at the Tour Motor Show. What do you think the 400S changed from the normal 400? Maybe the issues of fire hazards, tires, and weight distribution. But instead, the biggest changes were additional power windows, bright chrome trim on exterior windows and headlights, new overhead inner console line, bigger trunk panels for luggage space, also about 20 horsepower, along with some visual changes. This didn't address many of the major problems with the 400, but did improve on the changes to luxury for rich people who were buying the Miura. Lamborghini was furious that there were such big problems with the Miura, because he wanted to make the perfect Grand Touring car. So he made the Lamborghini Miura SV, the most famous and probably the best model of the Miura, fixing many of the major issues, such as the carburetors being altered to not start fires, and the wider fenders to accommodate thicker back tires for more traction. And they changed the lube on the transmission to work better. Even though there are more types of Miuras made in its last few years, like the Hota, SVJ, and the Spider, they were all low production models with less than 10 cars. And Lamborghini was already looking to design their next flagship model. But that doesn't really matter, because Lamborghini had already changed the world with the Miura, creating the format and layout that has since become standard for high-performance sports cars. Ferruccio Lamborghini hated the idea of the Miura when it was first shown, for being too close to a race car because of its mid-engine setup and having many race car parts. But when he realized it would be the fastest production in the world, smashing Ferrari out of the water, he agreed. Being the fastest production car and having an amazing looking styling that is aged better than fine wine, creating a way for companies that would create their high performance models. Lamborghini even used the same engine with slight changes throughout their entire history to EV and hybrid powered cars. The Miura has made its mark on the industry of supercars, making the supercar format popular and making the mid-engine layout usable for sports cars throughout Europe.